Tartary is a huge country that occupies most of Eurasia. This country, according to historians, did not leave behind samples of writing and monetary system. And this is very strange. Tartary was depicted on world maps up to the 19th century, but this country seemed to exist in a vacuum. There is a feeling that Tartary has not entered into trade relations with other countries. Try to find coins or other banknotes in museums around the world that definitely belong to the state of Tartary. There are simply no such coins. The museums are full of Roman, Persian, Iranian, Khazar coins. There are even cowrie shells, which the natives used to pay. But you won't find any Tartary banknotes. You will be told that banknotes of the Central Asian states were used in these vast territories. Perhaps this is true, but these signs appeared in these territories relatively recently by historical standards, and they are quite rare. A country occupying half of Eurasia had to leave behind tons of coins or other banknotes. It is possible that there was a different monetary system in Tartary, and it is not necessarily that coins were used. It is possible that banknotes of a completely unusual type were used for us. It only seems strange at first glance that other items were used instead of coins in the recent past. Everyone is already used to the fact that the Russian ruble is called wooden, and this is historically wrong. It would be fair to call English pounds wooden because it was in England that real wooden banknotes were used until the 19th century. Wooden money was used on the territory of Great Britain until 1825 year. Sticks made of walnut were called melting sticks, tag sticks or counting sticks. By the way, the old name of the English treasury was tag or counting. The tags were made of hazel, with a length of just over 20 centimeters, with a hole for wearing on a belt. The notches on the stick meant the amount. The thickness and width of the tag indicated the nominal value. The palm-wide tag had a face value of hundreds of pounds. According to the narrow tag, the count went to a penny. There was a complex set of rules about what the shape of the tag should be. The mechanism of issuing wooden money was as follows. Local farmers produced walnut sticks, on one of the faces of which transverse notches indicated the amount put into circulation. After that, the stick was split along, through these notches, but not completely, but through the pipes in the area of the handle. The result was a long part with a handle a drain, and a short one of foil. There were notches on both parts. According to the coincidence of these parts, control was carried out. It was believed that due to the complex texture of the hazel, forgery was impossible. This system of wooden money and tax accounting lasted until 1826 year, after which the tags from the treasury were transferred to the House of Commons for storage. 8 years later, on October 16, 1834, a fire broke out in the House of Commons, destroying the accounting tags of the treasury. Most of the British Parliament burned down precisely because of the wooden money. What we see now on the banks of the Thames began to be built in 1840 year, and the construction lasted 30 years. An astonishingly small number of wooden sticks, 21 pieces, have survived to this day. It's a very strange story with these wooden tags, because they were used not only in England, they are also found in France, Germany, Italy. Hundreds of tags were found during excavations in Novgorod. Wooden money of the world. This is a huge separate topic. I think that the world monetary system may not have been exactly as historians draw it to us. And so the monetary system of Tartary was not necessarily based on coins. Perhaps other items were used for monetary exchange. To study this issue, we will go to the small town of Churdin, Perm Kror. The town is small, but at first glance it raises a lot of questions. Here, for example, is the Trinity settlement, a high rectangular hill. That's what historians say about this place. In ancient times, the Komi-Permiaks had a pagan sanctuary and a settlement here. In 1535 year, by decree of the Tsar, the first Russian wooden Kremlin in the Urals was built on the Trinity Mountain. Very strange coincidences. In my last video, I just showed a very interesting place in the Moscow region, a town in the city of Zvenigorod. The history of these two places, Cherdyn in the Perm region, and the town in the city of Zvenigorod, seems to be written under a carbon copy. At the beginning, there was an ancient sanctuary. Then, in the 15th century, a wooden Kremlin was necessarily built, from which only mounds remain to our time. And this is not the only coincidence of the history of the towns of the Moscow region and the Perm region. I accidentally came across a video of the Jurgen channel. It tells about the village of Staroshevsk, and that in ancient times, the ancient Komi lived here, who were also called Chudyu.
There is a legend that ancient Komi lived in these places in ancient times. Well, they were called a little. And there was a battle of the Chudsky people near the Shoynal Lake. They fought for a long time, and day and night, and the corpses were thrown into the lake and Shoyan Yu, and from here supposedly came the name Lake Cemetery Lake.
There doesn't seem to be anything unusual in this story. That's just near the city of Zvenigorod. There is a Sevino-Storoshevsky monastery, and the river Storozhka flows nearby. A very interesting monastery, with an interesting history, but every time I visit this monastery, I am most surprised by the newly made monument of the founder of this monastery, Sala. The photo almost does not convey this, but from a close distance, this monument causes a very ambivalent feeling. These strange inhuman proportions, as if the modern sculptor wanted to hint at the not quite human nature of the founder. The more I study the history of the people a little, the more I find strange parallels between the Perm region and the Moscow region. The Resurrection Cathedral, in the city of Cherdyn, also surprised me. At first, I saw this structure in a video about Cherdyn. I see they show some kind of brick lighthouse. Then I hear that it's a cathedral. I couldn't believe my eyes even at the beginning. Double-checked. Indeed, the Resurrection Cathedral was built in 1750th year. Later the bell tower was added. In 1911th year, the cathedral was significantly rebuilt. I have only one association with this structure. It is a lighthouse. And this structure immediately reminded me of a little-known novel by Herbert Wells, War in the Sky, a novel of average quality. Of course it's not Tolstoy's War and Peace, but in this book published in 1908th year, there are very strange phrases that will help explain some of the mysteries of ancient architecture. In short, the novel tells how, quite by chance, an ordinary person took to the air in an uncontrolled balloon. A lot of things are written here, but we are interested in this moment from the third chapter. The country was hilly, with occasional fir plantations and bleak uplands. It was dotted with bright villages with steep roofs, and in each of them there was a peculiar and interesting church with its bell tower with a wireless telegraph. It turns out that, in 1908, everyone knew that the bell towers of churches were used as a wireless telegraph, and no one saw anything unusual in this. Herbert Wells, of course, is a science fiction writer. In this book, he also writes about monorails as a common form of transport. You might think that this is just an author's fantasy about a wireless telegraph, but I look at the photos of the Resurrection Cathedral in Cherdyn, and the idea that this wireless telegraph tower seems very logical. But that's not why we visited Cherdyn. The local museum has a fairly large collection of Pipesy samples. I have already talked about them in previous videos. These mysterious objects were found by thousands of peasants in the Perm region. And the most interesting thing is that only a smaller part of these items were in the graves. A huge number were simply scattered across the fields. The locals did not feel any sacred awe for these objects. They did not consider them the heritage of their ancestors. These unusual items were melted down dozens of pounds a year. And even so, some merchants made huge collections. For example, in the collection of the merchant Zaselev, there were more than 10,000 items. Znamensky's collection consisted of 2,700 items. Finnish scientists at the end of the 19th century actively bought up the miracle images and exported them to Finland. So, at the end of the 19th century, there were huge collections of thousands of Chudsky images. Can you imagine how many objects were found in the fields of the Perm region and other areas of Siberia, that even despite their almost industrial melting, thousands of collections of objects were preserved in the 19th century? Our historians have a very simple approach to explaining any mysterious thing. If an interesting and incomprehensible building is being excavated, then it is a temple or an observatory, because according to their ideas, people of the past centuries simply could not exist without temples, and those of the past millennia. In general, as soon as they kill a mammoth and have dinner, they necessarily build an observatory. Historians also have explanations for the Pipesy plates. They clearly divide them into miracle decorations and cult images. There is a certain pattern. Chudsky ornaments are found in burials, Chudsky images. No, although it's quite strange. Here, for example, is a cross, a very common religious symbol. This item is found both in burials and outside of burials. No one saw anything wrong with putting the symbol of faith together with the deceased. But for some reason, the miracle icon, as scientists say, is also a symbol of faith. People almost usually buried them with the dead. Jewelry, and very rarely Pipesy images were buried. So that's what I'm telling you all about. We have the state of Tartary, which has not left behind any coins. Almost all over the territory of Tartary, there is a legend about the people of a little, about which almost nothing is known, but from which tens of thousands of objects of strange shapes, with very strange images, remained at the beginning of the 19th century. Historians do not know anything at all about the Chudsky rites, or about the Chudsky gods, but they immediately identified these objects as Chudsky images. I don't quite agree with historians. You can't call every object of unusual shape a cult object. This item could have quite a utilitarian purpose. If we recall the wooden money of England, we can understand that the monetary system of the state does not necessarily have to be based on small round discs. This system can take the form of so-called miracle images. I think that the Chudsky images are the money of Tartary, which is why they were usually not found in graves. People almost put money together with the dead. Also striking is the number of samples found at the beginning of the 19th century. It's more like unnecessary banknotes thrown in the fields. The Great Tartary collapsed, and the banknotes of this empire lost all value. One can even recall a very recent analogy with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union collapsed, and Soviet rubles lost all value. Perhaps the people who came to the remnants and Tartaries rigidly suppressed the possession of such signs, and therefore tried to get rid of these items and massively melted down the bronze, which could be sold without problems. That's it. Watch my channel.